19th Commissioner meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Sure. It's the 17th.
17th, yes, I thought that.
My error.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so let's get a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August 13th.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And then also a motion for the payroll and AP manifests that we have been signing.
Motion to approve the payroll manifest for, what is it, for this month?
There's 3 payrolls and 3 AP.
Okay.
Since the last meeting.
6 months.
Since the last meeting, there you go, that sounds good.
Second.
All those in favor there?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, on to new business. DOT project agreement US Route 3 paving. Chair to sign 3 copies.
These
So that's
here.
these here,
That's
all
the
right.
agreement for the DOT to reimburse us for some of that paving work.
Thank you for reimbursing us for some of that costs of paving.
Yeah,
Route 3.
$26,000 worth.
We'll take it.
We'll take it, thank you. All right, so do we need a motion here to,
Is that downtown, the US Route 3 paving?
Yes.
So-
Right.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, the state was planning on repaving that, and
Toby
thankfully
Diamond.
they
Yep.
coordinated with us
That's
to
great.
wait until we did all that work. All right, so motion, you think, Kim? Motion
I
to,
would say you should have one for
yeah,
Chris
motion
sign.
to authorize me to sign this agreement with
So
DOT.
moved.
DOT, yes.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor here?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. I will sign those in a bit so we can move on. MS 535 auditor, yes.
I was wondering what that is, really. What is the MS 535?
It
This is
is,
my first time going through this, so this is what we get from our auditor?
It is from the auditors, required by DRA every year, and
By
basically
who every year?
the Department of Revenue.
Department of Revenue.
Yeah.
For New Hampshire, I saw that.
all
Yep,
right, so this is a formal
yep,
statement of a certain,
yep. So we have to
Layout.
categorize the different
Yeah, I looked at
funds,
it.
right,
and that is their opinion of where all those figures fit in that
Yes.
fund, and we just have to have you folks sign
I
your
didn't see
signatures
that
that you
yet.
approve it.
That was in the email, I read it.
I know,
Yep.
I didn't see it, I didn't know about it.
It seemed
So-
like overall.
yeah, we
well, that
rely
sounds
on the
good.
auditors to double check what we do, so.
Yep.
We seem to be in good financial, like our assets are up, our liabilities are down from last year, right, and our fund equity is up. And I think that's good.
Yep,
We're
If
in
you
good
look
shape
at our
so
overall
far.
picture, it is strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the income's up like $100,000, right?
well, it has to be to meet our
Yep.
Yes.
increased payments on financing. Yeah, so, I guess Tom can
Yeah,
look at
did they
that
have a
just
little
fine.
summation? They didn't have a summation here or anything, huh?
I
There's
think
a
it's
total.
on the balance sheet. The last page. It's the last section. There's 3 sections, expenditures and revenues and balance sheet. And the balance sheet, see, revenues, keep going. Balance sheet, right, so I think that's what I really watched was the balance sheet the most.
Oh,
mean,
I know, I thought you said the auditor had a narrative question, had a narrative, comment.
No, these are just the
Yes,
facts
sir.
and figures and the categories they fit
Make a
into.
Yeah.
motion.
And then long-term debt, right? I think that's a nice summary. I appreciated that, having a good look at our long-term debt. That's a nice summary sheet, right? So,
Concise,
yes.
yeah,
And it does show that we're paying off our long-term debt. I mean, we are still taking on more long-term debt, right? But that we are paying it off.
Very good.
Yeah.
I forget, do we motion on approving this?
I made a motion.
Sure,
Okay.
we should, and then
Second,
we need all 3 signatures.
Us, That's a
All those in favor?
yes.
Aye, okay,
Aye.
yeah. Alright, well, it's in front of me, so I'll sign. I'll let you all sign that. And then we segue on to our preparation for, as I say, fix and get ready to think about our budget for the coming year. I'll send that on your way, Kim.
Thank you.
So,
So in front of each of you is pretty much kind of a blank budget for the water and the sewer and an up-to-date expenditure report. To just give you an idea of what kind of things we've in the past put into each of these columns.
Right now, we're halfway through, a little more than halfway through,
Two,
2/3 through.
yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah. If you were at the end of September, we'd be 3/4. So,
right,
Okay.
Yeah.
so we're getting
Yeah.
close
So
to
we're getting close to 3/4.
Right.
Okay. Because some of it we're way underspending on, and others closer
Okay,
to
so we're
that
not a big
3/4
push on
mark.
that, so
No, I think we just wanted to give you like the basic layout, give you some information to look over. We certainly would take suggestions from the board if there are things that you wanna
Sure.
see. I'm sure that Jason has some items that may be necessary going into 2025 that he wants to talk about.
Yeah, just to go over, how we're generally, some of our budget lines are split out, so if you take the expenditure detail report for, say, water, the first subsection up top is general government executive. So that's generally a lot to do with commissioner wages, management wages for some of the office staff, moderator, treasurer, clerk, all of that stuff. Printing, leases of land, the 18,000 you see there is for our Holderness well lease.
That's a one-time, that's not annual, right?
That's
For 10
annual
years.
for 10 years.
Oh, it is
Right.
annual
Yeah,
for 10
so
years,
this will
okay.
be our second
Second.
year, our second payment.
Yeah.
And then you go down about halfway, you get into financial administration, so paying, like I said, for treasurer, auditing services, contract services, which is some of our MTS financial system. Then we go down to legal expenses, we have engineering review services as well as legal services, and those are generally for internal use. We do have engineering and legal that are reimbursable. Say if we had a project in town that required review, we do have separate lines for those, but this is mostly in-house if we need the legal or engineering services. And it was unplanned, so an unplanned engineering expense. Then we go down to personnel administration, so we have all of our health insurance, dental, life, taxes, retirement, unemployment compensation, workman's comp, meetings and training, which are for the staff to get training, as well as dues and memberships and licenses. So if they have to renew their operator's license, we pay dues to several trade organizations and memberships to get reduced costs on training essentially. General government buildings is maintenance on the office building here. Property liability insurance is our insurance through Primex for exposures for our buildings and such. We have water distribution and treatment administration, so we have all of our office expenses, internet, web services, IT, computer, electricity here at the office, telephone, cell phone services and alarms, and postage. Then we get down into the operations side more, which is under water services. We have our regular wages and overtime, longevity for all of our operations staff. Everything from backflow testing, water tests, trash disposal, propane, sand and gravel, all of our consumables, safety items, uniforms, fuel, and maintenance and repairs fall under that category. And we have a separate line for water treatment chemicals, which are all the treatment chemicals on Foster Street. We also have a contingency line, so if something came up and we didn't have a particular line item for that, we could put it under that line. Or if there's an additional expense above and beyond what was budgeted, we could potentially put it under that line. So it's kind of like a placeholder. We've had that over the last several years, and I think we've never had to use it.
I
Right?
don't believe we've used it
Yeah.
yet, nope.
And then we have, just below that, our long-term
Knock on
bonds and
critical
notes, which is our principal and interest payments for our long-term capital projects. And that's generally mirrored on the wastewater side of things. Most overhead expenses, we're splitting about 50-50 between water and wastewater, so there's not large variations there. But on the sewer side, we will find things like, let's see, if we go under sewage collection and disposal, which is on page 2. We do have larger line items like residual testing and removal service.
Right.
That is for our biosolids, our wastewater solids to be removed. So obviously you'll see that's one of our larger expenses on the wastewater side of things that we don't have on drinking water. I think that's,
Hey, so if you had a $20,000 line item and you didn't use it, how does that work for raising next year's tax revenue?
so that would be if we did any surplus that we have at the end of the year
Yeah.
that doesn't get expended would become fund balance.
Oh, it goes in fund
Yeah.
balance, and then you do the same thing, take another $20,000, but it would be reflected in that you would
Or-
raise that much.
Or we adjust the amount.
Right, or you
Yeah.
can invest it or put it into reserve, so we
Sure.
can't, there's a couple different mechanisms.
Okay.
There were several years, about 10 years ago, that we were using fund balance to offset user rates at that time.
Yeah.
We kind of got away from that practice over the last couple of years because we were eating into that fund balance and we knew that we had a lot of projects coming up and we knew that we needed to slowly increase our rates to accommodate that.
I
So
get it.
it's, we have recommendations through the Department of Revenue Administration for a healthy fund balance. We met with Dave Fox of Rep.
It was, I
Health.
think, they went from like 9 weeks to 6 months or something, didn't they?
Yeah, generally they're recommending about 365 days of cash on hand.
365, that's
Right.
a year.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's,
okay.
and
I know, I remember
when
it
we
took a
look
big
at both of
jump.
these budgets, it's almost close to 4 million.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's a considerable amount.
it is.
Can I ask a stupid question? PTD, what's PTD stand for? I know YTD year to date, but at the column
Paid
header.
to date?
Period to date.
Period to date.
Period to
Period to
date.
Period to date.
And so they're never different. Period to date, year to date. Right?
Because-
The only times you'll see them different if like something has been encumbered.
Okay.
Yeah, so these reports are set to periods from January to September,
Okay.
which is essentially year to date. If
Got
we
it.
set these periods from, say we just wanted to see August's expenses, we could set it to August, which would show us 1 month's worth of expenses compared to the year.
But we haven't set for the whole year.
Right, yep,
Okay.
so they are the same in this report.
Okay.
And we can modify the report, however you guys would like, to show whatever you would like. If you'd like to see a quarter's worth of expenses, or we can go over the last year, whatever you want to see. I mean, some expenses fall primarily at the beginning of the year. We do a lot of POs at the beginning of the year that are blanket, so you'll see a lot of that money encumbered at the beginning of the year, not necessarily spent, but it's encumbered, so that would come off some of those budget lines. And then throughout the year, depending on when debt payments hit, let's say, you may see large chunks come out But generally, you know, you can get a good sense of what essentially our burn rate is, how much we're expending every month, and how much.
Burning through money.
That's a little, you know what that is.
We
That's
review
what I
it.
say in the business world, right?
Right.
It's
It
gotta
is.
be millions
It
of
is.
dollars, you know?
We do run it at the end of every month, just to see if there's any
Yeah,
things that we really need to keep a better watchful eye on.
yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of wondered with the earlier report that had the amount of money that we have out in long-term debt. Is there like a recommended amount that we should be within a certain range of debt, given how much money our normal budget is? Do you know what I mean?
It's a
Some
difficult,
correlation to that.
Or just like, you know, what's a reasonable amount of debt for us to carry, given how much our typical budget usually is, right? For how much we,
I think it's a tough question to answer. Even
Sure.
the auditors are having trouble answering that. And one of
Okay.
the caveats is that village districts are not under the same rules as towns. We have a much more liberal spending, which is
You mean your
sometimes a
income to
little
debt
scary.
ratio?
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
yes, kind of
Yes,
looking at the
yes.
debt ratio,
So that's,
yeah.
you could look that up for a small utility or a small waterworks, and you'd probably be able to get an interesting answer, but it's, you know, it'd be good, because then we'd have something to kind of steer for, but
Yeah, we can look into some of those matrix to.
I just
Yeah.
wondered what it was, especially when we saw how much, it's such a good list of our long-term debts.
Yep.
And then I wondered, what's with that range that we wanna be within, what's kind of an acceptable
Right,
area?
the auditors looked at it last year actually and were going to ding us at one point because it was so high.
So high,
However, once they looked at different rules for village districts, we did not fall under that. And
Okay.
so-
Oh, we have,
plus you bumped the income about, you know.
And, right, what their
25%.
recommendation was that we needed to look more at a rate study and see what was necessary in order to support what we were doing. And they are totally in agreement with what we did
okay,
and continue to do. We have to
Yeah.
look at it every year as to what our rates need to be set as. Jason's been contacting
Which
David
might-
Fox, trying to, give him this year's numbers as best we can and see where we're gonna go with this budget for next year. If there needs to be any rate increases to balance it.
Right.
So we're working on it.
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, it's not like we have a credit rating per se that we're going to a bank and they'll
Right.
reject us if we have too much debt. Most of our funding is sourced through rural development or DES. We do have some loans out with commercial banks, but we have a history of over 100 years of paying our debts, and so that's, you know, a plus in our favor that we're
Right.
able to do that.
some of it's just like, how much, you know, what's within the responsible range of managing
Sure,
at
yeah.
any one given time,
Sure.
right?
So then they, you know, you take that and you correlate it to rates, and you can look at affordability versus willingness to pay. We've
Right.
had very good collections over the last several years, so that tells us that there is a low affordability issue. If there was a real burden within the community, we would have, you know, very low collections.
That's good to
We
hear.
do have a few customers that we put on payment plans and provide, you know, assistance to in order to pay their bills. And Kim and Regina have done a great job handling those and working with folks. So there's always a couple out there that we're willing to work with. We don't, you know, tell you no, we're not going to shut you off tomorrow. We may say that as an incentive, but that's, you know, how we operate as a system. We are looking to help people, not, you know, not
Enable,
right.
well, you know, another consideration, I mean, you could have a really high income to debt ratio, but if you did not, I mean, if you dug a little bit deeper and realized, well, we didn't have strategic planning or appropriate capital reserves, all that goes out the window, because, I mean, we could be slammed with millions of dollars worth of work that we need to do, which fortunately is not the case. We are doing.
I don't know how you figure that when you've got these, you know, the federal government's gonna subsidize you, you know, whatever they do, they subsidize the payment, some of them, and some of them, they give you lump sums on the principal, they discharge some of the principal. I mean, how do you figure how much you have what that note is worth over the years? what are,
It's hard to estimate, how much assistance we would get in regards to grants or other principal
yeah, but
forgiveness
even when you get them, is there, that's not that hard to figure it out?
We have good
Yep.
debt schedules that will show what the grant payments are versus what the loan's going to be,
Oh,
you know, and it's projected out over the life of the loan, so
oh, I see.
Yeah.
When we're offered the funding, they put it right out there, how
Yeah.
much.
you get an
Grant we would be
amortization.
When you're gonna
for-
get it,
Yeah,
so that's how you can wind up, and that's your debt, your
Yep.
overall debt.
and different agencies do it differently as well, like,
Yeah.
we experience with rural development, they make you, disperse the entire loan before you can actually dig into the grant. Whereas
Yeah.
the state SRF, does it as kind of an equal drawdown depending on the percentages. So like for our well project, we have 50% loan, 50% grant. Each disbursement request we do is a disbursement of both 50% grant and loan.
Nice.
And then the state reversed it all in ARPA, you have to use all
Right.
the grant first. So you've gotta keep a lot, like which way does this one go?
Yeah.
So we keep money on hand.
True, you've gotta have money in
We
it.
have to
keep
have
money
money.
on hand for that reason.
Yeah,
Okay, thanks, I don't have any more
Makes
questions,
sense.
so I
Thank
think
you.
that helped.
But that's why we're working on, master plans and strategic plans and all kinds of plans to put us
Yes,
in a
of course.
position where we can afford projects and keep our system whole, so that we're not,
right,
in a reactive state, we're in a proactive state.
Yeah.
For a change,
that'd be great.
which is nice.
Well, I mean, you're not alone. I'm sure that many towns that this money came down the pipe and enabled them to do things that they'd only be able to patch for the next 20 years,
Yep.
That was a lot of pipe laid. And more to come next year's Highland Street.
Correct, yeah.
And when's that slated to start again?
We're about just beyond 30% design right now. So we're hoping to be final design this winter sometime in February, putting it out to bid for next construction season.
Which will be spring or summer?
Preferably spring.
Yeah.
It's getting tight if you do February.
That's right.
Yeah. But that's also,
Is that a
some of
two,
that money is tied to ARPA, so it does have to be done
By
before 2026,
is that a 2-year project?
potentially.
It is.
Yep.
Sidewalks, all that stuff.
Certain sections.
Yeah.
So, our section that we're coordinating with the town on is from Broadway to Old War Bridge, for instance, and they'll be working on sidewalks there and such. Some of our water lines are in sidewalks, so at that point we'd have to replace them. Some of the water lines are in a single travel lane, which we may not have to disturb because we may be lining a water line or a sewer
Yeah,
line.
oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
How-
I've forgotten about that.
How long ago did we do work on Highland Street? I remember the Tulip was doing something. I remember something about the height.
Yep, that was 2018. Tulip did some drainage work on that.
That's drainage work. That was
Yeah.
not sewer or water.
No.
Okay.
No.
But they did mess with our water lines when they were doing it.
There were several conflicts identified during that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I recall.
But we're working through that with this.
Ahead of time, yeah.
That's great.
Other questions on,
So I think generally we're gonna, internally, we're working with staff right now and the different divisions, and Kim's working with the office staff to kind of nail down on some of these numbers and these projections. Some of the information we won't receive till October, November timeframe in order to get an accurate estimate. But each month from now on through December, we'll probably be updating this and bringing it to you and discussing if there's anything you guys want to see. We're open to make those adjustments in here.
Do you see any big hits coming?
On the solid disposal side of
Yes.
things.
Yeah, that's what I,
We have regulations coming down or being drafted this fall that may impact that. So we're we're trying to plan the best we can, but we just don't know what the numbers are yet. We've experienced some issues with disposing of material recently, and
Yeah, I read that.
Jason, how,
yeah.
what did you, so we pay RC there to pick up the sludge. And they take it, and do they compost it a bit, or do they take it right out for land?
Yep, so
Application.
we used to be what they call the Class B biosolids material, which was treated at our plant.
Yeah,
And currently we've transitioned to just a wastewater solids,
okay,
which then RMI takes to their facility in New Hampton and makes into a Class A compost. Part of the regulations coming down this fall, there's been discussion of Class B direct land application going away altogether. So we're kind of in a boat where we need to decide if this is the best long-term solution to pass it on to another company to make a product out of it that's Class A, or dispose of it at a landfill, let's say. Those are definitely two options. The state's trying to work through amongst themselves with capacity issues at landfills, as well as the capacity for biosolids vendors to treat material from Class B currently to Class A. So there's a lot of
What's driving this though? Is this,
emerging contaminants.
all right,
So PFAS would be
PFAS.
one of them. There's soil standards coming out for PFAS, which includes not just biosolids, but any soils within the entire state. So there's rules right now, which are the contaminated site rules, ENVOR 600, that are proposed for PFAS levels at 0.5 parts per billion. And the USGS did a study about a year or two ago throughout the state of native soils, and they were coming back at about 1 part per billion. So essentially the limits they're setting may be lower than the native, what they call anthropogenic background levels, which are
did
not.
you say 0.5 and 1%?
So 0.5 is what they're proposing to be the limit,
Yeah, and they've
and
already
the
got 1%.
background, is about 1.
because of atmospheric disposition?
Right,
Yeah.
yep. So we're commenting on that. We've commented on the rules once before. The rules will be coming back out revised with comments, responses from DES, but we'll be able to comment on them again. This is a serious concern because all of our roadway projects will potentially require soil disposal at a landfill site if we're not able to use it, if it's exceeding the soil remediation standard levels.
And that's for oils. right?
No,
It's for
PFAS.
several compounds, for oils, for PFAS, what they call
Chemicals.
PAHs, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, which have to do a lot with asphalt
Things that
and
come right out of the
roadway.
asphalt.
Hey,
or
I
out
look
of
at
cars.
the question I wanted to say is, we must have a book of record of all the places, or your contractor must have a book of record of all the places that he dumped this stuff. And we have the farmer signs off on that. Are we like
Not necessarily, no.
asbestos type with this?
In the
Okay.
past, it was up to the contractor to provide disposal of the material, and that was at their discretion.
Okay,
So they own the material once it was excavated. Now with these rules in place, we're considered the generator of these materials, and we would own them. We would have to tell the contractor how to dispose of them. So whether they can, some of them may be able to be reused within the existing trench, and some of them may have to be disposed of.
so if I had you dumping this, or your contractor dumping this on my lower 5 acres, then, and I start reading about these PFAS articles in the paper, and I go to a lawyer and start, well, that's not, they gave me a contaminant, and is that, are we gonna have liability through the subcontractor? I mean, cause that,
Potentially, but now the protocol is to pre-screen all the soils. So like for instance, Highland Street, we had a contractor come up and do borings throughout the entire stretch. And they send out samples on all those borings, so we have characterization of all the soils up Highland Street, which ones are good, which ones may not be good, and then we can determine based on those results how it would be disposed of.
There again, it's in grade levels.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
So that it would prevent anything from getting out into the public and possibly
Yeah,
spreading
bring
contamination.
a liability down the line.
But in the past, they didn't do that. In the
That's-
past, it was
that's all
up to
you
the
can do,
contractor
yeah.
to make those decisions. They own the disposal within the bid.
Wow.
But, like Chris said, it's, aerial deposition is also a factor. At that point, you may be able to bring, that the liability is maybe shifted at that point, because how can you prove it came from the soils and wasn't aerial deposited on the soils after they were dumped,
Oh, I see, yeah,
It's a really difficult
yeah.
thing to track.
I'm sure.
So, that's moving forward, it's gonna be harder and harder to dispose of and handle those materials, as we do projects.
Yeah,
Now-
so,
Sorry.
so these regulations are gonna make you start to look more at discharge from the plant into the river
Yep, that's,
and some alternatives there.
yep, that's part of the, our NIPD's permit, our national discharge permit. We have, our last, renewal about 2 or 3 years ago, we had PFAS, monitoring requirements in the permit, not limits, but, there wasn't a method or a test approved.
This just means going out and scooping it and bringing it back to your lab, right?
No, we'd have to send it out to another lab,
We have to send it out to another lab.
because we don't have the capabilities to test at the levels that they're looking for.
Okay,
But, so anyway, they put monitoring requirements in our permit, but we haven't tested for it yet because the test method hasn't been approved by EPA. It was just approved this summer, so I think we have 6 months beyond the approved test method to start testing for it. So in next year's budget, we will be budgeting for PFAS testing on the wastewater side.
oh, so is it just a matter of a good microscope that, because it comes down to you count the
Oh, no,
things in an inch or something like that, right?
No, that's for like bacteria.
Yeah.
This is for, what's it, it's called gas chromatography, mass spectrometer.
So we're not about to be setting up a lab.
It's about a $400,000 piece of equipment.
Whoa,
So
and
that's
what,
why the samples cost about $350 a piece. So it's,
And I was gonna ask, like the science behind changing the regulations on these chemicals, just so like if the public watches, and so we have a good understanding, have they linked this to disease,
Yep.
to human health?
yep, there's a toxicology, most of it's based on toxicology, setting these limits. And that's some of the underlying, causes essentially for some of these
Major illnesses.
diseases.
low birth rate, like
yeah.
that.
Cancer.
Right, cancer and stuff.
All of the above.
But the way they model it too is to protect the most vulnerable populations. So essentially infants and the pregnant mother.
There was an article either in the New York Times or Washington Post in the last couple of days of a new filter that somebody has invented that's very inexpensive that filters out 100% of PFAS.
Oh wow.
Really?
So I'll get that to you.
What do you do with the filtrate after
That's,
you're
I
done?
don't know. Send it to space.
Send it.
So that's kind of the issue
Right.
at a lot
That's
of
the
the
issue.
drinking water facilities too, is that they're treating the water, they're filtering it out in carbon filters, but then they have these huge vessels of carbon that are now contaminated. what do they do with them?
Right.
It's kind of like put it over by the nuclear
Right.
waste.
Yeah, bury it in the pit with the
Bury
nuclear
it
waste
with
in
the
the
nuclear waste.
mines, yes.
So it's
But,
it's
I think that it's important that, we just acknowledge that it's going up because we're causing all these other things and we're trying to mitigate those effects, right? So, and that's something that we need to pay for.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely tied to societal choices.
Yes.
People make choices to use products with PFAS compounds. They're either disposed of in the trash or flushed down the toilet, and they reach our facility. We're not creating these compounds. We're
Right.
essentially unable to treat them, so they're passing through.
So is there any regulation to try to reduce those? Like, are they
Yep.
trying to reduce their production?
Yep, so that's there's legislation out right now to ban several of the compounds in products, commercial products throughout the state, which I think is moving along quite well. That may come to fruition, but it's going to be hard to track them all too. Stuff coming in and out of the
Sure.
state
I
and
guess-
such. We're actually I think since 2000 we've been working with septic haulers and some of our commercial facilities to look at the products that they're using, detergents, soaps, waxes, things like that, to be able to educate them to say, hey, is there an alternative? We've stopped taking septic from boat marinas. We've had a few haulers that wanted to come in with several of the marinas around the lake, and we said, well, what do they do at that marina? Is it just a single toilet that they're discharging into a septic tank, or is it a floor drain where they're waxing boats? And we want to know exactly what's going on, so we've been drilling down into all of that stuff to try to reduce our loading of the contaminant.
How do we deal with the car wash?
We're working with them slowly but surely. It's a difficult
Right.
process because some of them don't have alternatives to use different products. So that's one of the next things that we'll be working on more rigorously as these regulations come
Right.
down. We're going to be required to, essentially record everything that commercial facilities are discharging.
Right, so they
And
get thrown out.
settling tanks don't solve that problem.
No.
No. Because it's passing the liability on to someone else. And that's essentially what, some facilities are doing with landfills. You're taking in material, you're making it into a solid or separating the water out of it, you're putting it, sending it to a landfill. The landfill has a leachate that comes out of the landfill from the liquid portion, which then has to go back to wastewater plants to treat, and it's just commingling, and it's a vicious circle. So that's what we're trying to eliminate, stop the transfer of liability essentially of the material, but there's no single destruction method yet that's out there that's cost effective or on the commercial market. So ultimately you'd want to destroy the compound. It's a very hard molecule to destroy, and they're also finding out that some of the even if you do destroy the compound, there's a head part of the compound and a tail part of the compound, and those heads may find tails down the road. So they're destroying it, they're pulling apart the compound, and then it's reconnecting.
Reconnecting.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So that's
You sure you want this job?
but it's it's definitely not gotten any easier regulatory wise over the last 5 to 10 years. It's become more and more difficult. A lot more regulations since I started 10 years ago. So we're working through advocacy, through making comments on rulemaking, legislation, all of that, as well as public outreach to make people aware of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think it's a real storm coming.
It is. It's a huge storm coming.
And I don't know, you talk about the budget, and the thing is that, when you step on somebody's toe, how long before they complain? And when you measure, this reminds me of the zoning board, how many people come in. That rate amazed that these people with the, the big pipes that went from 6320 or whatever it was up to $3,000. They no show. That was, we put it out with a good explanation. I guess it was a real good explanation because I never heard of a business that you could increase that thing so much and people wouldn't be all over you.
I mean, we explained it's, it's more of a correction. It's not
Yeah.
Yeah,
an increase in cost, but this is,
Yeah,
the
you
cost,
said.
the cost to provide service. That's what
Yeah.
we're looking to do, is align our services with these costs. And I think tying the service to the cost really shows our customers, what value they're getting.
Plus
For
there
what
was
that's
they're
right,
also,
and not
Yeah.
polluting the Pemmy, at this far up the Pemmy, I imagine the other towns up in Lincoln, we're the other big plants, Lincoln's the next one,
Yep, Lincoln has a wastewater system, Waterville Valley does,
okay.
and there's not
And
too
the-
many more above that.
And they all, they coming up with the same stuff, yeah, it's state regulation.
Oh, everybody's gonna have to deal with it.
I know.
one of the things with the rates too is there was a balancing act. So their sprinkler system may have gone up, but their overall larger users had a reduction. So there was somewhat of a balancing act, so there wasn't a huge disruption, they didn't see this huge increase. It really was the same, close to the same quarterly charges.
Okay, because the water rate was a little bit lower?
Right, so a larger user would get a bigger break when they,
Oh,
Right.
I
Yeah.
see.
so it was a balance. I mean, Dave Fox really worked to make sure that nobody was getting
I
really,
didn't pick that up.
Yeah.
I didn't pick
Yeah,
that
so
up.
we lowered the volume rate just slightly,
Yeah.
which is tied to a lot of the fire protection customers are large usage customers.
Yeah.
And that offset in volume rate and the increase in fire protection rate almost offset to an
I
equal
didn't
and
know that.
Yeah.
I was here for the presentation.
some of the
You were sleeping.
smaller.
That's
We do have some smaller
Yeah.
usage customers with fire protection, and they did see.
Yes.
yeah,
that
those were the
increase.
few, and
Yeah.
one was
They're
the
2-inch
church,
pipes.
so,
Yeah.
there were a few.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's move on, because we've got a number of
Lots
other
to do.
topics here.
Yes, we do.
Other big topics, including the next one, which I'm only heard a little bit about, strategic planning SWOT analysis. So, who's talking on this?
I might have initiated that. We don't have to make a big deal out of this, a lot of companies do it. And what it is, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Well, that's
So-
what we're just talking around there a little bit.
You just list those out, and everybody tries to come up with, a couple in each one or whatever. And then you just correlate them, and we talk about those. If all four of us agree that this is, that's definitely in this liability with the regulations and regulatory liabilities is like, obvious. And so anyhow, that's all it is. And, chairman just has to give the homework assignment to do this.
Do we do this already as part of our strategic planning?
we haven't in the past, we've talked about doing it, some. It's really just a matter of how we want to approach it. I've been on different organizations where, the board kind of did this, and then the staff did something similar, and then they got together and tried to align things. It's just how far you want to go with it. Really, we're looking at, I think the primary goals of that analysis are to create objectives. What do we want to do? How do we want to do it? And then that would lead to action steps, which would then hopefully align with our vision and our mission as an organization. And I think that's really the exercise that I would think may be beneficial for the long term piece of this. Where do we want to go into the future, and how do we address some of our threats or take advantage of some of our opportunities?
Might be a good opportunity to turn up things, something that we hadn't thought about, right? I mean, there could be, I mean, I'd like to think we're on top of all the issues, but there's always
It's like a
Some-
wild card. There's always a wild card that pops up every time, and it's usually something that you've never thought about. And you know, I understand looking at it might make a big difference in maybe finding something, but the years I've been sitting
Black
here,
Swan, you mean?
yeah, the years that I've been here, all of a sudden, you know, it's another wild card, and then the PFAS is a wild card that got thrown at us, and these regulation changes, and that's what continues to happen. And you can do all the planning in your world, and then they blindside you.
Yeah.
That's the way it is in everybody's planning, Bob.
Uh, this one's a little more because we don't have control over it. Somebody else is passing things that are out of our control completely.
It's environmental regulation.
Yes,
right?
environmental regulation, which we don't have any control over.
Yeah.
I mean, unless we're gonna pass a regulation that we can shut people down for.
Well, I mean, you
Conti-
could educate people, and maybe that's
Right.
a goal that comes out of it,
Right.
Is that we try to do more of that. Like, I don't know that we do that as well as, like, say, compared to like the electric co-op, right? They send out those little brochures every time they send out
Right,
bills,
public
right?
outreach stuff.
They do
If
public
we wanna
outreach.
increase that, you know, we can
Right.
set that as one of our objectives. and-
Exactly. So
Right.
there's some good there's some room.
Yeah,
There's some room for things that we could do,
Right.
right?
Right, I think, you know.
Within the confines of what we can afford and what we have the ability to do with the staff we have and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, workforce development was one, and you know, this year we were hit with the operator regulations, and we had to, you know, have some of our operators test up to higher levels or get a different type of license because of that. So trying to, you know, create that, you know, workforce that you need. How do we maintain that? How do we retain our workforce?
Exactly.
How do we recruit new workers if needed?
That's
we
all
went
good
through a
stuff.
management change over the last couple of years. You know, that could have been part of a strategic plan, things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's whatever you guys want to do with this, we'll be more than willing to accommodate.
Do you have a suggestion, Tom, like how we might, I mean, is this a work session?
Yeah, are we
That would-
allowed to?
No,
Or-
you
or we-
just take, Kim could just drop a form and email it to
So,
us.
so we all,
So just
we
write,
all, it's
what do
it's
you
an
think your
independent
strengths?
exercise, yeah.
Don't
But
make
at
a
some
big
point, we've
deal
gotta
out of it.
collate all of that information and,
That's what I was thinking. Can we
Right.
get together and go
Right.
over the three together?
Yeah, well,
Before
whatever,
we
yeah,
meet
you
with
mean,
everybody?
so you wouldn't, we would get together and decide which ones filtered down for the first time and get that on. Sure, I mean, whatever, Jason's gone through this. I mean, that's, you know,
I mean, it doesn't really do us a whole lot of good to go through the exercise if we don't identify things that we should be working on or reconsidering in the future, right? So it seems like that would be the purpose of the work session, to flesh those.
I've been
Flesh those
doing
things.
them. I've been doing them in my grad class,
Yeah,
my business grad class. I've done 3 now.
And the other way,
It's good.
the other way
Yeah.
we could do
You're
it is,
but it
Interesting.
seems like
the other way we could do it is that Kim and I can get together and, you know, provide some feedback so that you guys have some opportunity to see what, you know, our thoughts are, and then you can build on that too, either way you wanna look at it. So that you're not just steering blind essentially on
I
not
think it
knowing.
might be good to do it on our own first and then get
Okay.
your insights, right?
so.
Yeah.
If that's a boilerplate, then we can just copy it, get a digital file out. Or
Do we
I don't have to do it. But
But
I printed one out for you.
That was just a template I had on a previous exercise that we did. at a
why aren't you
different
gonna do it
organization.
for them?
It's not, I'm not a commissioner. I don't have any vote. I don't have any vote.
But you know, you've been here for all these years. Don't you have any ideas on what these opportunities
I
and threats are?
limit my stuff to my area of expertise. And I'm not involved in decisions. I can only suggest. So,
Either
I think they're
way,
open to suggestions.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would look at it with you, but I
if you wanted to do it, you could, but if you don't, that's totally fine too. You
Great,
know, I think you've got a different view. You're deep into the budget stuff, so and that could be helpful though. But I could definitely fill it out. Do we wanna set a timeline?
Wants to have what?
Do we wanna set a timeline?
Can we have it for the next meeting, or what do you, I don't want, we can't put out further than that, do we? This is just to have the rough ideas, right? And, what would we do? Maybe each person would read them, and then, you know, you go, oh yeah, me too.
Are we allowed to meet separately from our meetings? Can we meet once and go over it
course.
together?
Yeah.
Then I would say
What
maybe
do you want to do, a
We
work
would have to
session?
post a work
You would have to
session.
post it as a work
work
session.
session.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be good. I mean, it's pretty easy for us to get involved in a lot of topic. Even in a short meeting, we
Yeah.
get spread over a bunch of topics. And the work session gives us an opportunity to focus on one thing, which
Yeah.
I would say,
Right, looking really at the high level stuff,
yeah,
keeping things high level
yeah, I'd
and
like to see it that way.
And work sessions, do they have to be here and recorded? Just because I haven't done one
No.
before? No, they don't.
No, they
Okay.
do not,
So
but they
we
do have
could-
to be posted that you were meeting.
Right. So
They
it's
were
a pub-
meeting.
That's,
But we're allowed to meet on Zoom if we wanted to.
You could,
Okay.
we would just have to
What,
post
a
it that way.
Zoom session?
Please.
That's normal.
Please.
That's normal.
You're also
to them.
welcome to meet here
God.
anytime.
We
Yes.
do those all the
I
time.
know you do, I feel sorry for
That's a
you.
normal.
Well, we
business
can patch, we
today.
can
That's
patch
a-
you
I
in
thought
stuff
you were gonna
if
say the
necessary.
pub.
It's totally, I just think it's like,
There you
it's
go.
just easier sometimes. You don't have to drive anywhere.
Right,
Just
right.
boom,
So-
you're in a
Okay.
meeting, boom, you're out of a meeting.
The point that I think is being made here is the right to know law says the two of you can't have, no two people can have a conversation because that's the majority of the board at any time.
Correct,
And I'm just, you know, you just wanna make sure you cover yourself on that.
yes. So we would wanna post it
Right.
as a
Yeah,
work
let me
session.
know at least
That would-
24
yes.
hours. ahead.
Okay.
Yep,
At least
I'll post
24
it.
hours. And where do you post it on our
on
website?
our website and
Okay.
here at the office.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
I think that reads a little more particular, Bob.
Oh, I
Two
know.
people can have a conversation about things that are on the plate. You can certainly say hi to me and talk about the weather.
Yeah, we can talk about the
Yes.
weather, but yes, but I mean,
So
you can't
that's
talk
a-
about any business for the water and sewer department
Yes.
outside of a notified meeting.
No. Okay. Old business, where are we going?
Well, old business?
Is there anything?
I don't
No.
know, making old
No.
business, no.
Well, I
Business
kind of
fit?
had a thing, and I don't know where I want to bring it, but I thought about kind of do with that opportunity stuff, but I just wanted to throw this out to Jason mostly. Do we take residential septic dump? Are we a residential septic
Yes,
for the RVs?
Yep.
And so how much do we get for that compared to how much we get for, you know, the guy brings in his 500-gallon truck?
we charge $5 up to 50 gallons.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that like real cheap for you two guys to go out there?
Yeah,
and-
otherwise we charge
You have to take-
$70 per 1,000 gallons to the regular commercial folks.
Oh, boy, that's a lot. That's really cheap. What
Well,
do
I
the
mean, that's-
dumping stations get? I bet they get like 35
Campgrounds
bucks.
are definitely a lot higher.
Because they've got to pay a hauler to haul it
All
down,
the way.
haul
To
it
haul
their
down
tank.
here, and
Yeah,
you know, it's like,
Yeah.
Taking out the middleman.
Well, anyhow, that was one place I thought, it's kind of always an idea if you're a wholesale producer to look at selling his product retail. Because in a way that, with the campground, he's stepping on it, the driver's stepping on it to bring it over here. So if you got the guy, you went right to the guy, pull in, you already have him, they pull campers in right down by you?
Yep.
And they dump it in there. And is that complicated for you?
No.
No, they just put the pipe
No,
down, you give
they
them
discharge it
8-inch line
yep,
and-
into a tank and
a splash splash.
they fill out their information and provide their payment into a mailbox. It's really hands off for most of
Oh,
us.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought that was someplace for the revenue.
Yeah,
Whatever.
it's a really, septage is a really competitive market. We have Ashland right down the road and we have other
Doesn't sound right, does it?
facilities that charge similar rates to what we charge.
They
And
do.
we've had haulers in the past for less than 5 cents a gallon go to
Right.
another facility.
Yeah, but where are they taking it? And are they making long-term plans, you know?
Yeah.
Just because I know, they also have guys that probably take and dump it out in the back field. And so,
Yeah, they're not doing so much of that
they don't do that
anymore.
much anymore. Okay, well, that's good to
And a
hear.
lot of the
But I
lagoons are
can't
being.
believe it, really, Ashland, so you mean like
Yeah.
7 gallons for 50 gallons? That's a 50-gallon
Yeah,
drum.
1,000 gallons for $70.
For $70.
Yeah.
So 7 for 100.
You know, a lot of what you're paying for is hauling, so I mean, it's
Well,
expensive,
I
running
know,
an expensive
but-
truck.
Okay.
I mean, it's
Anyhow,
no different
I
than.
don't think you get it, I'm saying that,
So bottom line is, what's it cost us to process 1,000 gallons?
You look at our volume rate and our fixed rate overall to treat all sewage, and it's about 2 cents a gallon.
There you go.
Right, so,
yes, but we're left with that that's got unknown in it, you know?
So
Although
that's why we're regulating mostly, we're only receiving domestic septage, we're
okay.
not receiving commercial septage.
Yep, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, anyhow, the other thing I was thinking about is where does the water come from, the well? Where the treatment is in the well, right? That's where we do our
Yep,
treatment?
Right at Foster Street.
Right on Foster Street. So does that pipe come right up here? And if you cut it out here, that would be the cleanest water you can get in this town in one way or another?
No, all the water is commingled throughout the community. So what I mean by that is the water that's in the system, where at any point throughout the town is all of mostly the same quality. So it's not a different quality if you're closer to the well or closer to the tank, let's say, because at some point, when the well's not pumping, it's actually coming from the opposite direction, it's feeding from the tank down. So at any point in time, it could be
So
coming from
that's right.
multiple
And
areas.
so
Yeah.
these mains here still are fed from the tank
Correct.
to get the
Well,
pressure.
only when the pumps are not running. So when the pumps are
So
running,
then-
it's sending water this way up to the tank,
Yeah,
and in doing that, it's passing through all of the pipes that
okay.
people are connected to.
I'll just throw it on the table. I was over about a long time ago, I went over to Newport. And they had the nicest little 5-station spigots. And you pay with your card and everything. And you could get, a 5-gallon pail of water. And that seemed to be, pretty popular. I mean, did you ever looked into anything like that?
I have looked into it, but I haven't seen anyone implement anything like that.
No,
I've even looked into making ice before.
did you what?
Making ice.
Making us.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you had the right piece of land and you set this up on it, it could generate some money from that.
It used to be a thing, I remember that when I was a kid, there was an ice house in town, right?
Well, I was
It's not
talking
really-
5 gallons of water,
Yeah.
because I see it down at Crystal Springs. I mean, sometimes they take a long crowd, a lot of people. like
well,
that.
I mean, people go there for a specific reason.
Because of the water, well, some go because of the quality of the water, and some go because they need it. And there isn't too much of a choice for them.
Right, but I mean, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably multiple reasons, but I mean, I see your point.
Delicious.
I see your point is having a public place to provide water that from the system.
We
Well,
have
no.
been asked that question in the past. Even RV people were saying, where can I get potable water to fill my RV up?
Right.
Portable water, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's a question of where, how much does it
Right.
cost to implement? I mean, is it really?
Hey, it's just,
it's true.
don't
How
step
do
on
you-
the seed, it's just an
How do you
idea.
regulate it, who manages it, and is it there enough of a need that it's worth setting it up so that it can be managed,
And
right?
we do sell bulk water. So
They sell what?
we do sell bulk water. So we do have companies that come with
Oh, yeah,
tractor
for-
trailer trucks with tankers on them and fill up water and bring it either to fill pools or
Yeah,
to service other communities. Yep.
and how does that go?
Where do they fill up?
What do we
They
get?
fill up at the fire hydrant that we
Yeah.
have a meter on. So we have a meter on a fire hydrant.
Oh, okay, and
Then we
you
bill
get,
them very similar to septic, just by the
you
water
just get the
rates.
water rate, you don't
Yep.
charge the sewer rate.
Right. Yep.
Hmm.
They fill out a slip.
Well,
just like
anyhow,
septic.
that's what I had, I just thought that is, if you could get that, I don't know what they charge in these things. I wish I would, I never go that way. And, but, if we get,
You're
whatever we
thinking kind of
get.
like a vending machine type setup.
Well, it would just be a meter with a vending machine, yeah.
Ideally, like digital, where someone can swipe their credit
Yeah, I
card.
mean,
and
I don't
just
know what
charge
the
them
industry
automatically,
has
right?
for something like that, but, just an idea. It could be more revenue if you're selling your product, for 30-50% more. No, I mean, 3 times, 5 times. One of the crazy things about this society is that everybody used to go by keystone markup. I think everybody's heard about that, where you basically double. And as soon as the digital stuff came in, I mean, they go by, they make it 3,000 times, and it's just made it very hard to compete with that kind of stuff. So, when we go with $7 for 100 gallons, and we're left with this, final 1%, say 1 gallon, and now we gotta take that, and we gotta take it to our guy, and he's gonna treat it, and then you gotta go to the landfill with half of that, or whatever it works out to be.
Figure your percent on $70 a thousand versus
What?
the $7 a gallon versus the 2 cents to process. Figure your percentage on that.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's
So
the
we're
thing.
doing well.
Right.
The septage, we have a high demand within the area because we're only one of the few facilities that receives it. So that's that's why we kind of went down that path of building that portion of our business.
you did, it's up to
it was-
$500,000, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a significant piece. I don't know if selling the water side of things, if there's such a demand
I don't
that
know.
would benefit. We'd have to
Yeah.
do a business case on it.
I don't know, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, look at the revenue we get from septic. It's not $100 a month. It's,
No,
it's
that's right.
it's 6 figures, so it justifies itself. You'd have to sell a hell of a lot of gallons of water
To get it
to
up
make
that
that, to
rate.
make something like this. I mean, not that we should do everything for pure profit, but I mean, it
Oh,
could be a
no,
benefit
that's,
to
I
the
was
community,
looking for
but.
it for additional revenue,
Right,
so.
right.
Right. I mean, you can open up a bottling facility if you wanted to as well and start bottling water. There's all
Then
types
you
of different
Then you're getting
options.
$1 a pint, right?
Right.
If we may, on to business manager items.
Sure, I just have one to update you that Christian came in and went over the bank reconciliation with Jason and I, Regina and Kathy. And Kathy has just run with it. She's already finished up January. Bob signed off on them. And we just learned today that Christian's actually gonna start to do like monthly trainings on the components of MTS, which I think is gonna be wonderful, because we kind of just got given the program and not really the training sessions. So
Is he
Jason,
gonna do that by Zoom or?
he's gonna do it by Zoom, yeah.
All right.
So the first one's October 3rd, and we've all signed
Normal
up,
business
because
today, right?
we're hoping that it'll really take off. And
No, I'm surprised they haven't done that before because
Me
they
too.
should be training everyone in
Yep.
group.
So that is what we're gonna start doing, so. that's
And
what-
Kathy's working out well and
She's terrific,
so it's good to hear.
good numbers person. She
Well,
really-
it's nice that we've ticked a month off the.
Yep.
And closed it out.
Took us a while. Yeah, took us a while.
Yep,
Yeah,
and she's working on February and,
Yeah.
finding all the little things that need to just be accounted for.
mm-hmm.
You have to come and meet her.
I do.
She's very good.
Well,
And she came right on board with the interfunding that we have, the water and the sewer, and has been able to reconcile that. So that's one of the most difficult things in reconciling is to look at the bank statement where you have a single payment for something, but yet it's broken out into multiple funds in our accounting software. So,
And not
Something that
necessarily
says-
50-50.
right, so something that may be $100 payment to a vendor for an item that shows up in a check on a statement may be split, 70-30 between water and sewer, and when we put in our accounting, those numbers are split out that way, so we have to go in and combine those numbers in each batch in order for them to add up to what the statement says, so that's the most difficult piece of it,
She's been great at drilling it
putting
down.
the puzzle together.
Good.
That's what I have.
Okay, Jason?
So just wanted to bring up, emailed you guys a week or two ago about our whole effluent toxicity test. And what that is once a year we provide samples of our wastewater effluent, and we take a sample of the receiving water, which is in the river, and we send them to a lab for analysis. They test it for different parameters, metals, organics. And one of the tests they do is actually with live fish species, indicator species, the fathead minnow and the daphnia. And our permit requirements require that 100% of each of those species survive for 24 hours in our wastewater, 100% pure effluent. And this results, we
The
got back.
the discharge from our plant.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, and we got the results back, and we received 100% survival
Wow, that's great.
in our effluent. So it's a passing test. We're good for another year, and it just proves the quality of the wastewater that we're treating. There's a high level of biological waste that is coming in our front door, and we're able to treat it to 95 to 99% removal of some of the contaminants that are toxic to aquatic life in our river. So
It's great.
One thing you said, we talked about this, and you said, we take the test from like 3 feet above the discharge pipe. If you discharge here and the river's going there, isn't that clean water and that's dirty water?
we call it clean water and the receiving water.
Okay, the receiving water, does that like go right out into a circle for distribute? I mean,
Yep,
it's
so
funny, I know it's a state test and I'm sure there's rationale behind it, but it seemed, I thought you would have said, we take it, 10 feet down from the discharge pipe, not
No.
above the discharge pipe.
yeah, so we take it actually from the bridge, from the crossing at the bridge, we
Oh,
dip a sample bucket down into the river, into the middle of the river, and pull the river water up so it has no influence
Or
from the
shore or
effluent being
anything.
discharged.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we take a 24-hour composite sample of our discharge or effluent leaving the plant, and that's the sample that we
what,
use.
the 100%?
100%
Yeah.
wastewater, yep.
Oh.
And the two fish species survive.
Oh, I see. So that was the uphill shot that you took,
Yeah.
was to see what the baseline of the
right
water.
back.
Yep, so
Yep.
they do it at, they mix the water at different concentrations
Yeah,
as part of the test. So if you did receive mortality within 100% of your effluent, your wastewater,
oh, so.
they could see at different ratios, at different mixing amounts, what their survival is. And that's kind of how they gauge how much we discharge to the river versus the flow of the river coming through. So it's what they call a high dilution rate. So our wastewater being discharged is low compared to the amount of flow coming down the river. And they do that during the summer months because it's a low flow during the summer. Some facilities, for instance,
I like it, yeah.
Waterville, let's say, discharging into the Mad River. The Mad River is such a low flow compared to their effluent
Wow.
being discharged that they have different requirements too. So
Oh, that makes
I hadn't
sense.
it's really
thought of that.
dependent upon their
Because we have a
dilution
big
factor.
river.
Yeah.
That's really why they put the water and sewer treatment, the sewer treatment facility plant where it is.
Right. It's
Because I've often thought about that. I'm like, why is it so close to town?
Yeah.
but even like bacteria-wise, we talk about bacteria as a standard analysis for the health and the quality of water to be able to use. So, like for a river, for instance, the limit is 406 colonies, like you were talking before time, you count the little colonies of bacteria like in a petri dish.
Yeah.
And, you know, what we discharge to the river on a daily basis is about 1 colony of bacteria compared to the limit of 400. So on any day, the river, especially when it rains and you have non-point runoff pollution
Okay.
into the river may be dirtier than our effluent discharge, actually.
Wow, great.
So it's definitely a true testament of the, not just the science, but our operation of the facility as well, that we're able to get that kind of quality discharge.
Consider what gets dumped on you.
And it
Right.
doesn't go unrecognized, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think I, as a commissioner especially, would like to acknowledge what a great job the staff is doing.
Yes.
And what a great job you're doing
And then
supervising them.
in this education level here, that guy getting that.
Phil, yes, thank
That was
you
just
for your
great
good work,
to
Phil,
hear.
passing all those
Yeah,
tests and moving up the
Yeah.
educational
Yeah,
ranks.
it's great to
It's great.
have some guys that are, you know, really working towards some of their goals of advancement, and for the district to allow that and to also incentivize it. You know, some facilities don't incentivize it, and it's definitely a boost to the morale for the staff unit.
They really bought in.
that's what you want,
Yes.
right? I think that will help us in our SWOT analysis.
Yes.
I have that one.
Really well, right?
So I just wanted to give you an update too on the Holderness Well project. We're about 50% through the project time right now, and the Felice is on schedule. They've completed the sleeve installation under I-93 recently over the last couple of weeks, and they're starting to run the plastic pipe up to the Foster Street well facility. Their electricians have been on site also and running conduit from the electrical building up on 175 down to the well site, and they're starting to work in the yard now at Foster Street to be able to run electrical conduit to where some of the future meter pits will be. So things are advancing there, good.
So you came down the shore so that you could go under the river, under the highway.
Yep, we went under the river across from Holderness to Plymouth,
Yeah.
and then under the highway from east to west. Yep.
Oh, okay.
And we put 2 8-inch pipes in a 30-inch conduit under there, 30-inch sleeve. So
Oh,
one.
you pushed a 30-inch conduit. I really want to see that.
No, that was open trench, so we
Oh, that
installed
was
that.
open church. Oh, I
Yeah.
see. Okay.
So we're actually right under the bridge abutment
Yeah.
in an access road there. There's an access road for our property from the west side to the east side, because we actually own 15 acres on the east side of the highway there.
We do?
You have both sides actually, right?
Yep.
15 acres on each side.
And the DOT has access through there to be able to mow the sides of the highways as well. So there was originally an access road under the bridge. So we were fortunate we didn't have to drill under the bridge with a 30-inch sleeve.
Oh, great.
So that project's moving forward. We're continuing to work on sewer force main 4 along the Baker River. Our engineers were up today actually doing a tree count down along the river, because there needs to be a specific shoreline permit that will enable them to remove some trees but also replant some trees. So we're working within that alignment to get that done. And,
Hey, will you just trench that?
Yep.
Will you just use a trench machine?
We're gonna open trench it, yep, and it'll be the same as what we have over for the water line. It'll be a plastic fused pipe, so they'll fuse the pipe on the ground and then roll it into the
So
trench.
you'll try to get in there with a 2-foot trench box, or what would you use for that?
No, they probably wouldn't use a trench box because it's all built above ground and then rolled into the trench.
And how deep is the trench gonna be, like 4 or 5,
5 to 6 feet, yeah.
5 to 6 feet?
The only place where they would have to get in the trench is if they were setting a structure. So we do have several clean out structures along that alignment which are at the low points of the pipe, and then we have some air releases, which are at the high points of the pipe. But Wright Pierce continues to design that. They're about 75% design. We're very close to being 90%. We're just waiting on that shoreline permit to round out the 90%. And then we have asked a contractor to provide us with some costs for that too. We've derived the quantities for that project. So that project may be change ordered into the Main Street project, depending on the contractor's cost proposal. So we're moving on that, and then just wanted to also touch base and thank the Plymouth Fire Department for responding on Saturday morning to an electrical issue at the wastewater plant. We had an on-call staff that was present, and they experienced some popping and some explosions in the exterior lights, and we found out that it was an electrical issue caused by a wire that had melted and come in contact with a hot wire. So it was backfeeding the system with about 720 volts.
Jeez.
Why did that wire melt
Because
initially?
it's from the 1980s.
What-
The building
What was
is
it,
old.
aluminum wire or something?
No, it's copper wire, but we're not sure exactly why it melted, but we have an idea that these specific lights run a wall timer, and the wall timer was shut off locally at the timer, but the breaker was on because the breaker fed other lights. And we had a contractor working to do some generator improvements, and I think they went through the box, the panel, and switched things on and off to see which one was backfeeding the generator. And I think in switching that breaker off to the wall timer and switching it back on, it triggered the wall timer to come on locally. And I think that's what caused possibly the backfeeding and the overheating of that wire.
But ultimately
It's complicated.
suggesting that something was miswired.
Yes.
I mean,
Something's-
Right.
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, so
They
that's
should have done it, yeah.
From
Yes.
from what the electrician said, that it was something that was wired in the 1980s when the building was originally built, was legal then, but today it's not to code.
Yeah, I know, but it's still darting around the issue is that
Yeah.
something was not wired properly. Because
But it was at the
time.
time. That's the crazy thing. That's what
I don't
yeah.
accept that.
It's really
Do not.
scary because it's an old building.
Everybody
right?
makes mistakes.
Yeah.
What size breaker? I mean, I thought your lights, how'd you get 720 volts for your lights?
That's a great question. We haven't exactly found out why the breaker didn't trip. Because you
Yeah,
think
but what was
with
the
a surge
breaker?
like that,
What was the breaker, like 40 amp or?
no, I think it's only a 20 or 30 amp.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it took the full load, it's not just 240, it's like three phase? How do you get up to
Correct.
720?
Well, it shouldn't have been 720. It should have been 480 at most. I think the lights were only it should have been 277 at most, because the lights were only, that rated, but the neutral was also feeding another 270, so we had three legs to it, feeding 270.
I know from the email that I sent you, we have an alarm system and the fire department would respond there quickly if there was a fire, right?
Right.
But like worst case scenario, that building catches fire, right? What would happen to the water and sewer for the town?
It would potentially continue to flow, but it would stop treatment. And on the sewer side, you'd likely have a backup because we have to pump from our influent wet well up to the treatment process
Until
we can get could have isolated that building and
Yeah.
potentially ran generator power off manual control.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit hazardous, a little risky to
Yeah,
think
no,
about
that-
the worst case
right, no,
scenario,
Yeah, right.
right?
So basically, you could kind of get your generator up to the wet well and pump it up into,
Right.
but then you're still not turning your gears there.
Right, we would
Yeah.
have no
No,
no
Good
automated control. It would be all manual operation.
And you'd only sustain that for so long, right?
Right,
That'd
so
be-
we would have to stand there and turn the pumps on and off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In order to maintain the flow. So it's a critical piece. You know, the
Well, it
building,
worked well.
the building
I mean,
itself is mostly concrete. There's not a lot of flammable
Right.
material in the building. But electrical, it could have
Electrical.
fried everything
Yeah.
electrically,
Yeah.
and that's,
Right, I mean,
that's
that
part
could
of the
happen.
risk.
That's where all your electrical is,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's the big risk.
Yep.
So
But we'll,
it's kind of the tricky part of having all the electrical in that one main building.
Well, I mean, you could also argue there's a lightning
Risk.
hazard as well. I mean,
Yeah.
if you took a lightning hit,
Yep.
that could cause.
we do
extensive-
have, grounding rods and lightning antennas on the roof for that
All right, well,
building.
that's,
Yep.
that's good, that's comforting, yeah.
But yeah, we did, we will be reaching out to our local electrical contractor for an evaluation. And the town has also offered the town building inspector to sit in on that evaluation to have a second opinion as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, no, those are all positive things, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything
That's-
else?
That's all I have.
Okay.
tonight.
Thank you.
Purchase recs, we need a motion to enter those into the record. I'm gonna read off what we've got here recently.
You want me to motion before you read?
Oh,
them?
we could, yeah.
Sure, I'll so move to enter those into the record.
I was second, sure.
Okay, so the purchase orders of recent here, Vulcan Industries for $2,082. Power Up Generator Services, $13,834. Electrical Installations Inc., $1,985. La Tulip Construction, hydrant replacement. Was that reimbursed there?
Yep, that was from the work on Railroad Square.
Okay,
We
right,
had just
right, right.
received the invoice from them.
Yep. And then Harcross Chemicals, Aquacross, that also, well, $8,452.50, but was that
That was a
encumbered?
reissue.
Reissue, okay. AM Rand, rental excavator, $300. New England Waterworks, backflow prevention, $750. EJ Prescott, $1,166.90. GSM Paving, nothing on this side. GSM Paving, 2 POs there for patching after, paving after work we've done recently. 6,825 and then 1,600. Fastenal Company, $1,040.81. Power Up Generator Services, again, $6,131.02. Casella Waste Systems, Grit Disposal, $14,537.36. And then lastly, Russell Resources Inc., $304.32. All in favor?
These are all the ones we've already done on the.
Yeah, we've already approved these. We're
Yeah.
just, our motion said.
Read them
I
in the
second it.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's complete public comment. Do we have any public?
No public tonight.
No public tonight. The next meeting is October 8th, unless, of course, we have a work session before then, but October 8th at 5 o'clock, I believe that's a Tuesday.
Yep, it is.
We will now adjourn, or we'll now go into non-public session by RSA 91A:3, Section 2A regarding a personnel matter.